Hi, so today our group's going to talk about the emerging technologies, specifically the autonomous vehicles. So our group consists of Michelle, Andrew, Juan, and myself. So first, let's talk about how the vehicles actually operate and what they are. So autonomous vehicles are vehicles that can sense its surroundings and operate without the need of human intervention. This essentially means that a human or an individual is not really necessary in order to control the car, and you don't even need to be in the vehicle in order for it to operate. And that's due to the balance of the hardware and software efforts that's built into the vehicle. Um, when it comes to automated vehicles itself, the Society of Automotive Engineers, or the SAE, has defined 6 different levels, which range from fully manual cars to fully automated cars, and then in between is a mixture of both. Um, but speaking solely on fully automated vehicles, they basically rely on sensors, complex algorithms, machine learning systems, powerful processors, and etc., to execute the necessary software that is required for them to operate correctly. So all these aspects work together and then perform tasks and make sure that it's done safely so that no individuals get harmed while it's moving. So as you can see in the graphic, there are a number of different sensors that are located throughout the vehicle, being cameras, lidar, radars, and then GPS. And what they do is that all these sensors together give the vehicle the ability to generate and maintain a map of their surroundings. And some of the things that they look for are they keep an eye out for the movement of surrounding cars, traffic signals, road signs, and pedestrians. And they use this data that they're gathering in order to perform specific tasks. So once they gather all of the data, the various sensors send this to the sophisticated software that's built into the vehicle. And then that essentially acts as the brain of the vehicle, which tells each part what to do, whether that be stop, speed up, slow down, um, completely brake, or completely brake or turn to the left or to the right. So essentially move the steering wheel. Um, but basically, the vehicle can control itself and can do what basically a human does. So the sensor acts as the moving parts, and then the software built into it that gathers all the data acts as the brain. But now that we know more about how the vehicle actually works, we can move into the different methodologies that can be used within the industry.
Thank you, Rosa. So now, like Rosa mentioned, I'm going to be introducing you to some tools or methodologies that are useful for thinking about emerging technologies. And as we know, in this case, we are talking about autonomous vehicles. So let me start by talking about disruptive innovation theory. So autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, robocars, there are many ways that we can call them. Self-driving vehicles, transportation is on the precipice of a dramatic change that many argue will be exceptionally disruptive. In the autonomous vehicles industry, as well as in many other fields, established companies have a high chance of winning against new entrant attackers. Adopting disruptive innovations is one of the ways that a new entrant attacker has a chance of winning against an established company. However, some people claim that autonomous vehicles are not disruptive. These people like to highlight that disruptive innovations are usually made of simplicity, accessibility, and affordability. These people also argue that autonomous vehicles are displacing competitors with high cost. So high cost means that it goes against affordability, simplicity, and other ones that I just mentioned. Next slide, please. So now let me talk about another methodology, innovation attributes. So there are many attributes for this tool. Innovation attributes could include relative advantage, compatibility, complexity, trialability, and observability. Autonomous vehicles have the potential to transform many companies in the automotive industry, such as Uber and Lyft. I believe autonomous vehicles are a relative advantage for these companies. The innovation is better in terms of cost, functionality, etc., than the technology it supersedes. Autonomous vehicles represent a sustaining innovation to Uber and Lyft. Assuming the ride-hailing networks choose not to directly own vehicles, they will simply need to swap out one resource, human drivers, for another autonomous technology. Autonomous vehicles could enable them to offer safer rides at lower cost. This is not only present in companies such as Uber and Lyft. Another great example could be Domino's Pizza, in which we see now many commercials and many ads in which they have these little vehicles. I forgot how you call them, and they are starting like to use these vehicles to deliver pizza to customers. And same like Uber and Lyft, it will be done at a lower cost. Now I would like to pass it on to Andrew.
Thank you, Juan. And as Juan was talking about, we're going to continue to talk about some of these tools for estimating the level of disruption and the potential for disruption that autonomous vehicles have in the market. And we're going to start by looking at the technological life cycle for autonomous vehicles specifically. And we're going to take a look to start by looking at the major players within the market, that being Tesla and Google with their Waymo project, which is the name of their autonomous vehicle project and efforts they're putting forward. And autonomous vehicles are very much unique in the fact that disruption and innovation in terms of the technology is very much in the software more than it is in the hardware. Whereas we'll see the hardware that exists in the market in terms of the the radars and the cameras and GPS systems and things like that are certainly developing and continue to develop, as all technology in the modern age does and has. But the level of innovation that there's potential for, and the level of improvement there's potential for, is much, much higher in terms of the software. And any issues that you're seeing with autonomous vehicles has definitely been in the software area. And that's where the major difficulties in terms of disrupting the market have come from. And as we'll see a little bit moving forward, not only is there potential for disruption from autonomous vehicles when they do eventually get the software aspects right, again, that's assuming if they do get the software aspects right, is there's potential for disruption in many different industries, and in terms of logistics for a lot of different organizations, where there's potential for automation in the trucking industry, which is right now being spearheaded by Google's Waymo and the efforts that they're putting forward to really look to automate different aspects of shipping and logistics in terms of the trucking industry. So as we'll see here, again, the major driving force here is in terms of the software. And some of the software impact and implications that we're going to just touch upon here. Software, as we've mentioned, is certainly the name of the game for autonomous vehicles. The hardware that does exist is very extensive, and there's, of course, going to be that room for innovation, but there's very little impact that's going to be having on the autonomous vehicle market versus the development of improvement of software, where we've seen a fair amount of software struggles that have been the main factor holding back autonomous vehicles from really becoming a true threat and disruptor into the market, where there have been a plethora of these issues over the years, resulting in a relatively low confidence level and a pretty high level of skepticism amongst common people for the real long-term viability in terms of autonomous vehicles. So much so to the point where you see companies who were major contributors and who had major departments in terms of really pushing some of these autonomous vehicle efforts, that being Uber and Lyft, both selling off their respective investments into autonomous vehicles, where Lyft had sold their efforts and their programs with a subsidiary of Toyota, where there is a relationship that still exists there, where any development that is made, there's some contribution that will be brought back to Lyft. But again, this is all assuming that these software issues are ironed out, where even today, where some of these autonomous vehicle technologies and efforts have been going on for 10 years plus, even then, just recently in the news a few days ago, fairly recently, there was reports of a autonomous Tesla vehicle that had mistaken the moon for a yellow traffic light. So of course, as you can see, there's still certainly struggles in terms of software that really need to be ironed out. And as Michelle will mention as we move forward, those are the real major factor that needs to be ironed out before they can be considered a real threat in the industry. And with that, I'm going to pass on to Michelle, and she's going to talk a little bit more about some of the tools and ways that we're looking at autonomous vehicles.
Thanks, Andrew. So next, we will take a look at the technology diffusion. The biggest issues with this form of technology is that it's not going to be ready for most individuals for a period of time. This would be more appealing to innovators and early adopters. So the innovators who have the desire and willingness to take on risks, to try new things, and early adopters, which are the opinion leaders who are selective about technologies that they adopt. Are autonomous vehicles a threat? So although the software is not perfect, there would need to be a change in the technology, and that would need to be a priority. There could be other dangers as well within autonomous vehicles, such as cyber attacks, false sense of security, and more. There could also be malfunctions that could be a major setback for these vehicles, and it could damage the opinion on these vehicles and it moving forward. And that is it. Thank you so much for listening.